Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you again. So, I haven't updated for a long time because I had some health issue. Um, so now the doctor asked me to do more outdoor activities. Right. So here I come. I try to walk around where I live. Try to do a bit more exercise. Hopefully, recover quicker than planned. Um, I'm thinking about this series, and I think I should continue. So we will continue. But at the same time, you can see London has been entering the deep autumn, and a lot of people say, "Why don't you take some photos in London?" I think it's a good opportunity, right? So I will be adding a bit more um, city walk in London, and then put on the YouTube. Okay, let's continue. So last time we talked about the BO schema, and this time we will move on to the BO algorithm and inheritance. See you there. Hello, everyone. I'm back, and today we're gonna talk about the BO algorithm and also inheritance. I'll break it down into four areas. So first, we talk about what algorithm can be applied on the business object level, and second is how can we write logics in those algorithm, and also how do we debug if there is any issues or any information we want to know the variables, for example, at a certain stage at runtime. We can use debugging to find out quickly. And number four will be the business object inheritance. Okay, so the first one is business object algorithm. So first of all, as I mentioned before, when we talk about data, it's a static presentation of business data. When we talk about process, it could be the dynamic aspect of uh, changing business data. So we have seen the business object schema, which you can apply. Say on the schema, you can define a particular field is, let's say, a string, and you can add some validation rules on top of that. Say the length cannot be under 13, for example, for the mpan, the length has to be 13. However, if you want to apply some dynamic rules, for example, if it is a mpan, it has to be 13, but if it's an mprn, which is also normally as we consider that as a geocode, that will be any length, right? There's no definition in terms of mprn and gas. So in this kind of rules, we need to apply that as a business validation rule, for example. Also, there are other types of rules. For example, the pre-processing, which basically any action applied on this object or on this record, pre-processing rule will be running, and normally it's being used as massage the records before it's being processed. And also post-processing algorithm. Normally that happens um, for example, if I want to update a particular record, and if there is a status change in terms of business model or in terms of let's say as a part of the business process, we could be writing a post processing to trigger another rule to be run if that rule is based on a different process or it's based on a different business object. So this is kind of dynamic rule can apply to the business object. And also we have audit rule. We've seen the audit rule being used most likely if there is a change to the data, for example, on the add, update, or delete action. We could be writing a audit trail. We could also be using that to say send an outbound message to another system to inform something has changed if this change is very critical for that system. So this kind of this kind of requirements can be satisfied by audit algorithm. And last one is the information algorithm. Basically, it's just to prepare the information string to be displayed to the user when they are looking at this particular records. Now let's look a bit deeper into the data model, how things are working at the back end. So from a business object, we can define business object algorithms. Okay, so that is defined on the system event, which, as we just mentioned, it could be validation, pre-processing, post-processing, audits, and information. Now, you can extend that. If you want, you can extend that. But normally, any requirements from business, from my experience, these system events should be enough to handle all the changes. There will be some additional system events when we see the products like MDM or SGG, when there is external system change coming into the system, we want to trigger a particular process. In that case, additional system events will be more suitable. But you can also build that into the existing system event. Just say in your logic, you can introduce these particular triggering points. Okay, so I would say don't try to reuse as much as possible rather than create new system events, which it doesn't prove to be necessary in most of the cases. And then the business object behind that will be an algorithm. Algorithm is sitting on top of an algorithm type. And when you see the algorithm type, you could see there are multiple implementation can be happening underneath the algorithm type. One of them is the plugin script, and this is actually quite often used in the implementation because it is easy to implement and also easy to deploy. Also, you can use Java behind it, which have a better performance in terms of processing batch jobs or large volume of data. And the last one is the latest one introduced, which is called Groovy. That is also a scripting language and very similar to Java. We talk about that a bit later. Okay, so part two, algorithm logic, Java or script, or Groovy. Okay, so as we said, there's three options we can use: scripting, Java, and Groovy. Java is a very common programming language. I think a lot of developers, they will know it before they even know about the OUAF framework. I think it's probably the easiest one to start with if you know Java. It provides a lot of the framework functions using Eclipse, and the only downtime for that is if you want to deploy it requires system downtime. So some of the project they prefer not to use it for that particular reason. Similarly, Groovy is coming out, and Groovy is trying to replace Java, but I think there is also some restrictions because it doesn't have a very good development tool similar to Eclipse. People have to write the codes using some other external tools, and also it's similar to Java. It's quite hard to debug because if you want to show certain message at runtime, you have to be very explicit to write the debug code. So my favorite is scripting. Okay, so I think it's very easy to learn as long as you know how scripting actually works. But scripting also come back with a few setbacks, I would say. Scripting doesn't have a library behind it. I mean, you can start to build some libraries to have the base functions. However, scripting doesn't have vast amount of functions provided like Java. Sometimes you do need to write those functions yourself for project to reuse. So if you are talking about a very big project, maybe that's fine because you can manage this within the team. But if it's just a small project and needs very quick development, I think it just take a bit longer time for you to write script rather than Java. But so far, in my experience, scripting is still the quickest way and the easiest way for not only development but also deployment and any debugging related functions. Okay, so talk a bit more around the script. A lot of people, when they start with the script, they're not quite sure how the script should be written and what those commands can do and how to put things together. But I'll say something very basic in this session because I'm not going to talk about scripting in a food context, but this session I think I want to bring some concepts. What is scripting? And first thing is the algorithm written in scripting is linked to a particular BO if you're writing a plugin script. So plugin script could be, in my experience, could be a BO algorithm or a BO status algorithm. So these algorithms, they are based on a particular business object. And if you look at the schema, which we will be looking at that a bit later, the base schema for plugin script is related to business object closely. Okay. The second thing is the plugin script type need to match the algorithm type. Yeah. So remember we have when you write an algorithm and plug into the business object, the algorithm has an algorithm type, and algorithm type can be linked to a script. So the script type needs to be compatible with the algorithm type. Now, let's look a bit more on this script. What are the components of the script? Okay, data area. So script has a data area and on the data area, it's very much like when you write a Java code, it's like an import function. So if you want to use some other features, some other classes, you need to import that class when you're writing a Java class. And that's very similar here, because if you want to reference a business service, if you want to reference a business object, you will need to put that into the data area. So the script logic will be understanding what you're using. Okay, that is a very important concept. But also, what is important is when a data area is defined on a script, the XML, the schema of that service, is automatically added onto the script itself. Which means when the script is running, the data area, whatever has changed to that service, when you're calling a service, what data has been sent in and what comes out, that will be recorded as a part of the data area. A part of the schema for this particular script. Okay, so in that way, it makes debugging much easier because you can see not only what the script is changing, what in terms of the script schema itself, but also for all different related service, what they have been bringing the value back, and you in that way you can actually see which particular let's say which particular part of code is bringing the wrong value. Okay, so that is very important concept to understand. So the second one would be the script schema. So script schema could be quite different if you have different type of scripts. In the system, you could have service script, which is like you can define the schema for itself, or we are talking about plugin scripts here. And when you look at plugin script, you'll see a structure, a rigid structure like a palm with soft and also hard. Soft actually means the soft parameter, which means the parameter defined on the algorithm type. Okay, so it's not the algorithm, it's not the soft parameter on the script, but it's taking the soft parameter from the algorithm type, and the value is defined on the algorithm. The hard parameter is referring to the business object it is referencing to. And so from there, you can actually get the BOID, a couple of other things, status, etc. So if you're interested, have a look at your plugin scripts, see what they actually brings. Next, I would say when you write a script, you can use these type of steps. I think it depends on what type of script you're writing, but I just want to point out a few things. For example, label. Label is, for example, if you want to introduce, say, a comment at the beginning of the script, say what the script is doing, maybe you want to trace the changes, you can use a label step to track all this information. The most common one is edit data, because the edit data is a step where you can write a series of statements, commands. Very often, I mean, if it's not if it's not a algorithm or logic involving too much steps or branching, I would just write everything in one edit data, because it makes it easy for people to read, and it is also easy to maintain as well. From the script, from debugging perspective, if you write that in one edit data, it would literally just loop through the, not say loop through the, going through the commands one by one. Okay, so it make it easier for you to debug it as well. And the last one is the script logic, and the script is essentially doing data manipulation based on XML structure, i.e., data area and schema. So when you look at this, is really helpful to understand when you're doing debugging, because debugging is literally trying to going through the step and seeing what is happening at different step. Okay. Okay. So next part is debugging. Um, say, how do you start debugging? It's quite simple. I mean, you can just put this question mark debug equal to true at the end of the URL, and that will basically start debugging. You see a line of um, options at the top of your screen, and you give a few options for you to say start debugging, set up the global debug, which then you can have a few options to add additional information. And also there is a button, say show the view log, and the action has been performed by yourself. If you log in with your particular user, you will be able to find out your user has performed certain tasks, and within that, you will be able to trace what has happened. Okay, so here is a picture from Global Debug. Now, the actually, to be honest, the only one I normally would use is just trace output, because you have to remember there's one very important rule here. The script is manipulating the data. Every step, within every command within a step, is literally doing a data manipulation. When it is running through one line, you should be able to see what has changed to the schema, right? And you also want to track what command has changed a particular set of data. So that is why you need to trace outputs at every single line being performed. There are other parameters like trace SQL, trace program start and end, which is normally useful for the COBOL, but COBOL hasn't been. I mean, COBOL has been um, less and less used within recent versions. So I would say the only one which is the most important one to use is trace outputs, and try not to use the other ones if it's not necessary, because it gives a lot of information which might make your debugging a bit difficult. Alright, so last part is the business object inheritance. Um, I put a very big question mark here. Okay, I don't want to talk too much about inheritance because I have seen it's being used in the project. I've seen it might be helpful for people to think it is similar to abstract class. Um, if you're coding Java code, but I would still say try to think about whether it is the right one for you before you use it. But let's talk through what it can do. So you can define a parent BO. and the parent BO is basically just the BO, and your child BO refer to the parent BO. They need to be referenced on the same MO, right? So that is yeah, quite easy to understand. Um, the second bit is the business rule. So generic business rules can be defined on the parent BO, and when the system executes, it executes the algorithm on the parent BO first, and then child BO. Schema is not inherited. The data structure can be defined. Yeah, because for the child BO you might want different information or extend the information on top of the parent BO. And by saying that, actually, that means the life cycle we haven't talked about in this session. The life cycle from the parent BO will be inherited to the child BO, which means if you have a life BO, the parent BO life cycle defined, child BO has to follow it. The last one will be the debug. When debugging an algorithm on child BO, algorithm on parent BO is also executed. Yeah, as we said, the business rule, execution order, they will be run first. Now, the question comes in whether we should be using parent BO. Personally, I don't think it really worth it. The reason is when we have the system setups, let's say you have two BO which are very similar, and the second one could essentially extend the first, the BO. But that is only the understanding when you are doing the design at that particular time. And time again, things change. Things could be changing because these two BO doesn't relate to each other anymore because of the requirement has changed. The other thing is whatever the business rule or the um, the for example the BO algorithm, BO lifecycle algorithm, they could be replugged on both BO. I mean, you can design once and plug in on both BO. It doesn't have to be a parent BO uh, setup to inherit these logics. So they can be reused. But if you set up the child BO and parent BO, that means your life cycle is locked. Very often we don't see we will see those limitations just to really make it difficult for any future system change. So for me, I would prefer to have separate BOs and to let them work separately, but we can reuse all the components has been designed. Okay, so that's it. I hope you liked this video, and if you have any questions, any comments, please let me know, and have a good weekend. See you next week.